Today, 3D is the focus of today, working kind of both ways from 3D blockouts to kind of textured images, and also kind of the other way. Once you have something that's kind of already been rendered, textured, you've got the 3D asset, how can you then use those 3D assets to really bring that back in and kind of use a posable, already textured character or object in order to then create things like key art and splash art. So we'll kind of do both directions today. I will cite as we kick off that a lot of the stuff that we have in store for today was created by other people. Most of them are available online, and you can kind of pull them down and play with the assets yourself. A lot of the 3D stuff from Sketchfab. So this is fun. This is going to be kind of a cool way of highlighting some of the great work that people are doing on Sketchfab and out there in the world, and kind of how you can use AI in the process. Hopefully it's helpful to everybody. So let's kick it off. To get started, we're going to start with the first object here. Now, obviously, this is pulled from Sketchfab. It's kind of the matte cap version of it. Think about this more as a technique that you can actually make better if you prepare the asset for this use case. And we'll kind of talk about what makes it easy and what makes it hard to pick up on the things that we want when it comes to controlling using this. We're going to drop this book here on the canvas, and we're going to, with this control layer, we'll just use a normal depth map. What the depth map is going to do is obviously, again, look at this object and try to figure out where in 3D space it is. It's going to add in depth and kind of show the dimension, if you will, that the monocular depth estimation tool is finding. We're going to apply this and we will get started on this piece. Now, in this case, what I'm imagining is something like, I'm a really big fan of those, like the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Necronomicon. You got this kind of like ancient text of pure evil that we want to kind of build into this. And I think there's this kind of cool idea here. There's like this lump on the front cover that could be like a face, something wicked. And so we're going to kind of use this to imagine that. Now, what I'm doing right now is I've got a couple of templates that I've put together that are going to be useful for like item texturing, environment texturing, character texturing. We'll share these out, but this is basically like game rendering, engine render. It's kind of highlighting a lot of the terms of art for this category of kind of taking a 3D object and kind of texturing it. So we'll use that as our tool here. Yeah, we'll start with that. We'll see what we get. Okay, so there's some cool stuff here. I mean, I kind of put some like books, this like a book in a book over here on the side, but we could work with it if we wanted to. That's pretty gnarly too. That's kind of got this like weird face on it too. But some of this stuff is kind of cool. Let's play around and just see what happens if we take out some of these words and we go with like demonic book. Face on cover, worn leather. And this one's kind of got this like devilish Diablo look. The book on the inside is kind of nice. And you know what? This is kind of a cool opportunity for us to play around with using multiple parts. So maybe I like the cover of one and I like the pages of another. Like this one's got really good pages. I'm going to save this as a new layer from this image. So that's kind of popping that down to a raster layer, default off. But I can still flip between some of the other ones to see if I want to find, a cover that I like better than this one. I kind of like the cover from this one a little bit. The horns are wonky. It's kind of weird. I'm wondering if there's maybe like a way to fuse this and this. So let's save this one. And then we'll save this one too. I'm going to turn these on. We'll hide our control layer here real quick. We want the pages from this one, right? So I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this as the top layer, and I'm just going to erase the cover because we don't want that cover. And now the question is there a way to get the kind of like mouth from this guy onto this one? And so I'm kind of erase this piece here. I like the way that looks. It's kind of, yeah, somebody said very Warhammer-ish. It's kind of like chaotic, right? So we've got that piece. We'll have to fix some of these horns up here if we want to like play around with that, but we've got an interesting idea that's in play. So we're going to kind of like use this as our composited render. Now, if I want to kind of like consolidate and say, this is my base layer from here on out, I don't really expect to go back and use anything underneath. I'm going to kind of like transform it all. You can merge that into a visible layer and then just get rid of the underneath layers. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in And I'm actually going to like just transform this using a very low denoising strength, like 0.4. I'm going to kind of let it go through and reimagine this. And maybe I'll pull in an option that's even lower denoising. That's just kind of like tightening up what's already there. And we'll do another one that's just even lighter, just kind of see what we got there. First option was a little bit high, a little bit lower, and a little bit closer to what we had originally. This guy's got some good eyes, so we'll kind of like take that, right? I'll accept that. And now what I'm going to do, because what I want is to fix some of these like 3D elements that didn't really pick up well, but I'm going to turn this control layer off. And then what I'm going to do is just quickly kind of brush in areas I don't want to keep anymore. Maybe I'll just kind of brush in this top piece and kind of make that a horn, and I'll brush in this top piece and make that a horn. I'm going to let it kind of like imagine its own horn there. And then we will do some inpainting. So an inpaint, the top part here and the top of the book and everywhere that I painted. And we'll kind of do, we'll probably want a reasonable like 0.4 or something like that so we can tighten it up a little bit. And I anticipate that the top, top looks a lot better. There's a little bit of blurriness here on this, which we'll fix probably by doing another pass, but we can see it's kind of already turning that into more of like a horn-like top. And we'll maybe do another pass here. So I'm flattening this as a merged layer. I'm kind of consolidating all of those as a raster layer, and then I'm going to convert that to a control and get the edges of it. Now what I've done is I basically said, I like this notion of horns and the shape of this book. And maybe I even want to go in and like fix some of this a little bit. So there's like some weirdness on these pages. So I'm going to kind of get my eraser on the control layer itself and kind of erase that out. You can either erase it or use black on the control layer to kind of say, don't put stuff here or don't control this part of the shape. But I'm locking in that shape so that I can come in and then do some more inpainting. So we'll do that. And maybe I can get away with going a little bit higher on that denoising because we've locked in the shape. It's not going to get rid of my horns, kind of keeping it on the rails. Some of that missing page stuff. We'll do another pass here. Maybe I'll change some of this. I'll play around with the scheduler here. I'm going to try KDPM2 only because KDPM2 often gets a little bit more gritty. And so I kind of just want to play around with the scheduler a little bit. And that looks pretty cool. Now I'll just get rid of the control layer. I'll paint in some of the like book stuff. We'll get rid of this like iron plate and just put kind of page color up on top of the book. And then we'll inpaint this piece. Let it imagine some pages. So this is our like demonic book. Super cool. We're going to save it and do another 3D object. We're going to take ourselves off into this gate, this nice little 3D gate here. So I'm going to duplicate this first, and then I'm going to process the depth map. And then on the second one, I'm going to switch to contour detection. So now we've got two layers of control. We have the lines and we have the 3D depth information. Now those two things are going to give us the control over dimension, but they're also going to give us the control on the detailing on the outline. And we're going to try both of these and then we will see if we want to reimagine it more. And it's still a little bit kind of like darker than a normal image. And what this is going to typically be from, so when you're using two control nets at the same time, they can kind of like conflict or fight with one another. In this case, what I think I'm going to try to do, we've done this technique before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to merge this control layer down. And now we've got one control layer that has both the depth information and those outlines from our contour piece. This, we're going to put through multi-guidance detection. We're going to see, can it pick up on what we want it to do? I'm optimistic. Look at that. Doesn't it feel so good when it works the way you want it to work on a live stream? It certainly does. What you'll notice though is that because we did this with one control layer, they weren't fighting each other. We kind of brought it down into one. Multiple control layers and control nets in general, if they're high strength, they can kind of like tell each other different things. One model's kind of injecting conditioning that says there is nothing here, and the other one is saying there is something here, and that's why you get like some conflicts. But this really kind of pulled that out and gave us a nice place to start from. Some of this is a little bit flat because of that 3D shape, and it doesn't have as like much looseness, so it doesn't really look like Real, it looks kind of like a 3D game. But we'll pull down our multi-guidance detection and we'll just run another generation. If you want to think again, we've talked about this in the past. The begin and end step are where this is being applied. So do we want it early on in the process where it's trying to figure out structure, or towards the end when it's doing details? And then the weight is how strong that is. So we might say we want it to keep it kind of structurally similar at a high strength. So early on, very structurally similar, and then we're going to kind of let it go, and we'll see what happens when we do that. And so that's a way that you can kind of like give a little bit of freedom. What ends up happening, though, is some of those details end up getting lost there. And that's not something that we necessarily want. And then obviously we can go in and inpaint stuff. We'll turn this down a little bit and then turn it back up here. And then we'll come in and maybe work on this gate just to kind of show some detailing of this thing. Now, somebody asked, are you able to change the light direction in your prompt, top right instead of top left? You could do that in the prompt. Let's see what we can do this time, though. So we're going to get rid of these, right? We're getting rid of these, and we're saying, what prompt could we use to get the lighting from the right? And what we're going to try here is backlit midday, and see if we can kind of like imply that it's coming from the top. It still wants to do it from the background. Oh, it's kind of getting a little bit more up top and front lighting. Kind of everything sitting on top there. We can see that with midday, we kind of got a little bit of up-down lighting, although it's kind of still coming from the left rather than the right. So there's definitely some stuff that you can do around lighting. Maybe we'll do a session on lighting in the future. So we've got our ancient gate of wisdom, recognizing that I turned the weight down a little low and we lost our like handrail here. But I kind of like what we generated. So I'm going to save this, and we're just going to answer the question of how would we get that back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw it in real quick. All right, and we're going to copy that to our inpaint mask and just inpaint that rail. Somebody said 3-point lighting is a term to get a good general light setup. Let's give it a shot. Let's try it one last time after I get these rails. We'll do a completely new one and use that suggestion. Let's turn this all the way up. 3-point lighting. 3-point lighting. See, now I got our little rails back in. They're all good to go. Okay, let's try completely from scratch again with 3-point lighting. My weight was very high. Let's bring that down a little bit. Maybe we'll bring that down here. Oh, there's some lighting from the right. Look at that, 3-point lighting. Hey, I think we all just together learned from the community a great term. Great job. This is great. Sharing those prompt terms that really help everybody out. You like that? Much better. It's all from the front. You guys are great. We're learning together. Okay, we're going to close that one out. Got our Cyber Samurai, but I think we're going to flip the direction here, doing the other way. Most of the time, I will say this is not direct one-to-one where you just use it. More often than not, you're going to bring this in and paint over it. But the question is, how can we use this and kind of almost use the 3D system where we've got a textured 3D asset to pose it around, do the lighting, and then bring that in to the illustration pipeline. That's always really interesting. So we're going to use this asset that we borrowed. One of my favorite games, Smite. This is kind of the god of war, and we're going to kind of turn this into an illustrative type looking piece of art. So I'm going to bring that in as a raster layer. And then I also want to copy that to our control layer. I'm going to, let's see about hard edge detection. Let's just see what that looks like. A little bit more squirrely. Let's just try it out. Let's see. And then, for this, because we've got this kind of like cutout, I can do like a general color background that I want. And so in this case, let's say it's like this like reddish warscape kind of thing. And I can even like draw some rudimentary colors if I want to. It's like get into color theory and see like where we want things to be. When you're doing this type of transformation, trying to keep the texture and color the same, we're going to use one of the same techniques that we talked about in previous sessions. We're going to talk about the tile control net. And the way that the tile control net operates, we are effectively using that to kind of like keep it on the rails from a color perspective. We like this general color. We want to make this a background first, okay? Rather than leaving it super janky, we want to make a background first. I'm going to turn off my control layer. I'm going to leave the background. We're going to do high denoising. We're going to do a fiery mountain. And we're going to get this like background from this. It's got this like little dude over here. We're going to ignore that guy and get rid of him. But we get a much better like background. That looks pretty cool. So we're going to get rid of this dude down here by painting him out of existence. Sorry, guy. And we're going to inpaint this a little bit. And then we're going to have our background. And then we'll layer our base Roman god on top of that. So now that we have this layer, I can get rid of this beautiful work of art underneath. We've got kind of guided where we want lighting and kind of where things should be. And we've got this kind of cave-like thing. We're going to bring our base Roman god on top. And then we are going to flatten. Going to copy that to a new control layer. We're going to multi-guidance detection that, bring the strength low and bring it early on in the process. And then we're going to give this a shot at a higher denoising strength. And I got to fix the prompt. Canny control net back on. And maybe we'll turn the strength a little bit higher here. And that'll kind of keep everything on the rails. All right, so we've got some parts and pieces that we like. The areas we don't like with this, we're going to erase. And we're going to go back in and we're going to do detailing closer up. So the next piece here is we want to get this face kind of right. We can erase the part that we don't like and that we want to repaint. All right, so we're going to erase this kind of head part here to bring that back. And we're going to rely on inpainting at a much lower strength closer up. So we're going to bring that inpaint mask back. Bring this in and maybe turn that control down. That will be better. We always want to kind of focus on the details, right? So AI is never going to do 0 to 1. This is always why you have to go back and iterate on the parts and pieces, but you just need to understand how and where to control things. So I'm going to turn up the strength and we're going to do some inpainting on this head. And the reason why I'm turning up the control layer for this multi-guidance is because what this multi-guidance is doing, if we turn off the transparency effect and turn it on, it is driving in that original color. This is basically like, give me the original color back, right? So this is a way of biasing our generation back towards that original image. And I'm keeping that around and kind of mixing up the strength so that I can kind of like pull it back towards the color that I want it to have. So we'll turn that back off and we'll see if we can generate this closer towards our original, and we'll compare and do before and after and all that fun stuff too. So we turn this before and after, we're getting those spikes back, and we can continue kind of focusing on some of these details. So we'll pull this back in here. And if we see something that the model struggled with, so let's turn back on our kind of comparing our control image and the original. So some things that it struggled with that we can really see are the shield pieces here. We might want to go back in and do that a little bit more. I'm going to turn up our canny quite a bit. And then I'm just going to kind of inpaint that. So we've got that mostly selected, and we're going to see if that just, with the controls and all the stuff that we've got in here, if that's going to be enough for this. It's definitely better, but it's not too bad. Maybe I'm going to accept it, and then I'm going to erase some parts. I'm going to hide our control layers, hide this down. And the parts that I really liked from the original was kind of like the darkness down here on the bottom and kind of it's like a little bit sharper almost. I like the coloring of that, right? I'm kind of like pulling out some of the darker colors from that earlier version. I probably want to tune this down a little bit. So I'm not bringing as much of the original color in. I'm relying on our canny to kind of bring in the sharpness here. And I'm going to inpaint this another time just with a lower denoising strength so that I can kind of like keep the existing colors that I've already used here, but I'm just kind of like blending it in a little bit more and giving it that final oomph of detail. It's okay. I like the original kind of like style though, some of this. It's like a little sharper and more painterly, like this piece right here. Maybe if I turn off that control layer, it'll be a little bit sharper. All right, so we're going to take that You just come in and tweak some of the details over here on the left when it comes to a hand holding a sword. So we'll talk about hand holding a sword. One thing we haven't done is regional prompting, which can really help with like some of the detailing here. Like this is a chain, this is, you know, a shield. So I'm going to do some of that here just so that we can see it. So we'll do regional guidance, we'll do prompt, hand here, and we'll do sword here. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to copy to the inpaint mask, and we'll just add some more inpainting in right there. And so we've got that, and we're going to just see what we get. Give it a shot. Might be too low. I'm realizing now that the denoising strength is quite low, but it is getting closer. Something that I'm noticing though is the color has drifted quite a bit. So I'm going to pull this multi-guidance back up just so that we keep more of that. Overall, like close, and it feels pretty good. And if we compare this to the original image, let's just take this up to the top here. We can see that it really kind of did a nice job translating some of those details into a more painterly style. Obviously, some elements that need a little bit of work. Maybe we inpaint this part right here in the middle and see if we can pull out some of those details a little bit. So we'll erase that inpaint mask and just kind of pop that out. Yeah, so we fixed some of those details there. They probably could still use a little touch up. We'll accept that. And, you know, the places that I'd touch up a little bit more, probably the bottom of this, fix some of these chains. So we can kind of come in and, you know, fix that. Maybe I'll just do that now with a little bit of this. Chains, belt, torso, Roman, skirt. Probably still some things that we could do. If we compare this to the original, which we will do for the before and after, boom, painterly, not painterly, painterly, not painterly. For the sake of it, we're just going to see what happens if we inpaint some of this bottom part. And we'll call it a day after that, I promise. Okay, cool. We've got some like nice kiltish painter style. And we can continue like doing that detail everywhere that we want. You know, some of the chains over here. We're going to crop this, save this to the gallery, bounding box to the gallery. Right, so we got this from that, this illustrative painterly concept art from that. Now, why is that valuable? Because this, even though right now it's posed like that, if you wanted to get it posed in a different way, you can take that exact same character, pose them out how you want to, and then get a really cool kind of like illustrative thing to paint over and solve for some of those base layer referencing tasks that you have. That's it for today. Hopefully you all learned something. We had a lot of fun as we always do, but we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Always enjoy it.